All right, everybody, hello and welcome to another beer brew review. And today we're going to get simple. So simple, in fact, I'm not even going to change out of my work clothes. I'm just going to straight up do this because it's supposed to be really easy. What are we doing? We're making mead. Now, mead is just honey, water, and yeast. I know it doesn't look like yeast, but trust me, it's yeast. Right now, the only reason I have a pot here is because I have my honey sitting in warm water, so I can hopefully make it easier to pour out of the container when I'm done. All I'm doing is using standard old tap water that, yes, I did boil this tap water. I boiled it for a while, let it come back down to temperature, and I'm going to make 2 single-gallon batches. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I want to make one traditional, just straight up honey, water, yeast, see how that does. And the other one, I had some leftover strawberries in the fridge. I figured, why not add some strawberries to another one, see how different that flavor is when all this is said and done. But as always, sanitize all your equipment. I'm using Star San. I already sanitized everything. That's why there's still some bubbles in here. It's because the bottles were sanitizing. I've sanitized everything along the way after my water came out of the boil, after it cooled, bottle sanitized, poured it in. You notice I'm only got about a little more than half of these things filled up. Maybe this one's a little bit more right now. I'm having some spare water to the side that was still from the boiling batch so I can top it off if I need to. This honey is going to take up quite a bit of room in these bottles. So what I'm putting in is 3 pounds of honey into each one of these bottles. Now, that might be overkill. That's supposed to give you a pretty high alcohol percentage from what I understand, 12 to 15%. Pending your yeast can deal with that. I sadly do not have any wine or champagne yeast. I only have ale yeast, so it probably can't convert all the sugars before they die, so I probably don't need to have all 3 pounds in here to get the highest yield, but we're going to do it anyway just because these happen to be 3-pound containers. So 1 in each one of these. I'm going to add the yeast, add the strawberries to the one, and we're going to go from there. And it really should be that simple. We'll find out, and that's why I'm just going to start going at this right now. So honey, let's get the honey, pour it into one of these. See how hard these are. This is just store-bought honey. Bought it from the local grocery store. It wasn't actually that expensive. I think they were about $9 a piece for one of these. I could have bought them online for much cheaper, but good honey. Really good honey. I forgot how tasty honey is, actually. It's kind of sad. Let's open this up, and we'll start pouring this one right into this bottle. And pretty much the hardest part about this is you have to do a lot of shaking when all is said and done. I probably should just open this up and pour. That's what I really should do. I also heard that it can work pretty well if you add the honey to the water if you're heating it up like I did if you're boiling it. You can add the honey not while it's boiling, apparently. I guess that takes away some of the flavor. Oh, by the way, in case you didn't realize, I've never made mead before. I don't even know if I've ever had mead before, but I just wanted to do it because I seen it, it looked fun, and hey, we're going to experiment and have a good old time. But you can add it in your boil to make it easier to dissolve, because right now I'm going to have to deal with a lot of shaking. But I kind of wanted to take this from the perspective of just the average person at home who just bought the ingredients and did it, because you don't even have to boil anything. They suggest you use like distilled water so that you can, hopefully it's more clear of any possible bacteria or anything that'll get into the water. That's why I used tap water and boiled mine. So if you just bought a gallon of distilled water, you could just start pouring the honey right in and shake them up. I've actually seen a lot of other videos on this. And I suggest you don't just watch my video. I'm somebody inexperienced at this, but if you're interested in the process, go watch other people's videos as well. I watched lots of them. They're all very entertaining in their own way. I've seen different people with different recipes, adding some star anise to their batch to give it some different flavor. I actually got the idea for the strawberries from one of the videos I watched and happened to have strawberries that are in the fridge going bad. But right now, just sit back and relax while I speed this thing up because it's going to take a while to start pouring all this honey. Cap, sanitizer on, and shake. And the reason I'm only pouring one of these in here right now and shaking this is because that seems like an excess amount of honey. I did read that it was supposed to be approximately 2.5 to 3 gallons per, or 2.5 to 3 pounds per gallon. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get this to dissolve or not, so let's find out before I go too crazy with the other one as well. It might work just fine. And actually, it does appear to be dissolving pretty well. It just is heavy and sticks to the bottom. So I'm going to start pouring the other one in here as well, too, so you can get them both shaking at once. And these bottles might look familiar, these gallon containers. These are the same ones that I use for my apple juice, apple cider making videos. Is the so those 1 gallon things that you can buy from Whole Foods come in handy, because now I've got some fermenting vessels for a whole different thing in the 1 pound variety, so I can have a bunch of different experiments going, and this is going to be hopefully fun and delicious when all is said and done. Opening these things up and pouring was clearly the way to go. You just got to be careful that you don't make a mess. There's a decent amount of honey left in the bottom of these. I could put water in there, switch it around, dump it in. I might just turn these over and actually consolidate into 1 jar and have a little bit of extra honey here at the house, because I really don't think I need more honey in these things. So put those down, get this cap ready to go. And now shake and mix. All right, now that these seem to be mixed thoroughly, what I want to do is take a specific gravity reading, see what my potential alcohol level is, and then we can take a final reading after all the fermentation is done. So let's see. I'm only going to take a reading out of one of these containers. They both should have the same amount of stuff added to both. Decent amount of bubbles up top there. Makes it really hard to actually see where I'm at. But what it looks like is my potential alcohol percentage is at the 15% line, which is at 1.118 approximately. So my initial reading is 1.118. So we'll have to see what the actual final is when the yeast do their work, get a calculation based on that to find out what my actual percentage of the alcohol is when all is said and done. But in the meantime, put this to the side. I'm going to pour this right on back in because it's sanitized. I sanitized both the hydrometer and the cylinder. Don't want to waste this. And then what I'll do, looking at these, I think it's actually the perfect amount of headspace in here. Though when I add strawberries to the one, things might change, so I actually might need to do a little bit of transferring. I got a decent amount of strawberries in here. We're going to add to the one. I will add it to the one with the least amount in it, which seems to be this one. We're just going to keep going. These are just strawberries I had that I cut up. Pop them on in. Normally I would tell you to go ahead if you do different mixes in your batches, like I did with the apple juice and the apple cider, as to label them. This one's actually, one of them is labeled with brown sugar still from the last batch. Yes, they're clean. It's just I stuck it out with some pretty hardcore tape job to make sure it didn't come off, and so it's still there. But I'm pretty confident that with the floating strawberries in the one, it will be pretty easy to know which one is actually which when all said and done. So I am a little concerned how filled up this thing is now, but a lot of this is foam, so my alcohol or my mead concoction is actually only to about here. I still think I have plenty of headspace in this one. I'm not that worried about it being too little, so I think we're going to be okay. Now, with that being said, what I need to do is I have half a package of a standard ale yeast in here. I measured it out. It's about 1.5 teaspoons is half the package, so it was 3 teaspoon package. I got half of it out because it's supposed to be for a 5-gallon batch. It's only 2 gallons here, so using half of it's going to be just fine, but I got to put about 3/4 of a teaspoon in each one of these. That's a quarter. quarter. And I know a lot of people are probably saying, why didn't you reconstitute your yeast? I felt like making this just like a standard person who has a kit with dry yeast. You could just put it on in there. And the rest should go in here. So I wanted to do it without reconstituting it, just so it was as simple as possible. The most time-consuming part about what I did is, like I said before, is the boiling process, because it took a while to boil 2 gallons of water for about 10 minutes, and then I let it sit and get back to room temperature, which took a while. I am gonna shake it up and aerate it with the yeasties in there. Sometimes I say to just like let it sprinkle on top. I'm gonna just shake it up, shake it up, shake it up. This one I especially actually wanted to shake up because I wanted to make sure the yeast got off of the strawberries and within the solution. So there we go. I'm going to pull out my airlocks and my corks. To their level, open this up, cork in, top on. Might need to dry it off. It's a little, that one's a little bit big. I think I pulled out the wrong size cork, but it'll work. We'll make it work. I'll just dry it off. This one will probably work much nicer. Yeah, it's a smaller cork. I believe it's the number 4 cork that fits these, and this one's a number 5. I believe that's the case. Let me take a look. Actually, it doesn't say on the cork what it is, but either way, let's make sure it's nice and dry. And unfortunately, I'm not going to dig out the other cork that I know I have for this, because I do have another one of the smaller ones, but it's back in the supply closet. So we'll just make sure this works. There we go. I'll just make sure I dry this thoroughly. And basically it's just to make sure stuff can escape and bacteria can't get in, so it doesn't stay on perfectly. It doesn't need to form a huge seal, it just needs to make sure nothing can get in there. So anyways guys, that's it for this stage. Now I'm just gonna let this stuff sit, let it ferment, and in 1 to 2 weeks when the bubbling stops, I'll transfer it to a secondary, and then it probably sits for a couple months before it's gonna be good. But anyways, thanks for watching this episode of Beer Brew Review. Stay tuned, more to come. All right, hello everybody and welcome back. It has been a couple months since we started this process. And you may notice just by looking at the picture that things are slightly different. From starting this batch with the one standard mead recipe that was just honey and water, and the other one that was honey, water, and the strawberries added to it, I only ended up with 1 gallon of mead resulting. I unfortunately didn't get some of this stuff on video, but I originally took a specific gravity reading of both the mead containers after about 2 weeks of fermentation. The bubbling had stopped in both of them, and they had very, very, very slightly lowered. So I was like, okay, I used that yeast that was meant for beer. It wasn't meant for such a high specific gravity and alcohol content yield. So maybe I need to do something different about this to try to salvage this batch, because it didn't, I don't think anything really happened like it was supposed to. So I said, you know what, let's add my yeast nutrient that I have. So I did have some yeast nutrient. I said I wasn't going to use it, but I did. And I'll add the rest of that yeast container between the 2 containers and let it just run again, because maybe it was just too much for the yeast to handle, and that stopped it from actually fermenting appropriately, and we'll see what happens. So I added the yeast nutrient to my strawberry brew. I added some more yeast to the strawberry brew, put it to the side, started doing the same thing with the non-strawberry brew, and I don't know what it was, but I added the yeast nutrient to it, and it was like an explosion. The whole thing just started bubbling up instantly, started shooting out the top of the container. I started freaking out, didn't know what to do, tried to grab it and run it over to the sink so it didn't get all over my kitchen, and it was so slippery at that point, I dropped it on the ground, it exploded. I shattered one of these fermenters, and all the honey and water from inside of it all over my kitchen floor. It took me hours to clean it up. Do not make the mistake that I did, because all it is a sticky mess of honey and water. I swear to God, I washed my kitchen floor. I mopped it with soap, with bleach, with anything I could find at least 14 times before it stopped making a squish, squish, squish sound as I walked through there. Needless to say, I finally did get it all cleaned up, got all the glass cleaned up, but that gallon was gone. So all I was left with was the gallon that had the strawberries in it. So I can't really do a taste test between the two because I only ended up with the one left. So 2 weeks into that, I took the Mead Brew, and you can see in the video now, and I transferred it from primary to secondary fermentation. I actually only did that a handful of days ago. I almost gave up on this stuff because it just looked so cloudy. I wasn't really sure anything was happening. I thought maybe the thing was ruined. And then after a couple days, I don't know if you can see this, it cleared up quite a bit. And I was quite impressed because I didn't think it was actually nothing. I didn't think things were happening with it. So a couple days ago, I took a specific gravity reading of the Mead, and it is down to 1.0. So it converted all of those sugars into alcohols. So this, if I remember my calculation appropriately from the beginning, this is probably about a 20% batch. Now I know with mead, a good mead, you're supposed to let it sit for a while, and it's probably going to be, get better with age and be a couple months before it's actually good. But I figure we're going to taste test this thing now, and then I'm going to let it sit, and I'll probably do a follow-up video if in a couple months to see if it actually changes the flavor too much. But you can see in my secondary, there's still some, I don't know if you can see that too well, there's still some sediment on the bottom of this thing, and it's because it wasn't a perfect job using my siphon to get things over to the secondary. I probably should have just poured and used like a funnel or a strainer or something like that to make sure I caught all the stuff, but I got most of it. There was a nice layer of yeast at the bottom of the container afterwards, so having this left is pretty good to me. And right now, we are gonna open this baby up and taste it. So it smells like, it's definitely got a strawberry smell to it, which is kind of nice. I don't know how else to describe the smell. I've never actually had mead before, so I'm not sure exactly what it's supposed to smell or taste like. But if I pour, I mean, look at this. Look at this clarity in here. I mean, I can see right through this thing to the camera. It is so clear. It smells delicious. Ooh, it's sweeter than I thought it would be, and then it's dry. It starts out very sweet, and then it gets really dry. This really reminds me of a sweet wine. Wow. Oh, that is fantastic. I will be honest, I was not expecting that. This is delicious. I'm not sure I have to let this sit for another couple months because this tastes honestly more like the cider than my cider making video did, and this has nothing to do with apples. This has strawberries, honey, and water, and yeast, and that is it. And wow, is this good. I definitely want to do this again. I'm probably going to use some champagne yeast in the next time as opposed to using beer yeast. But you know what? It's all an experiment. It's all fun. It's all learning, and I am very impressed with this mead. And it's definitely got that strawberry kick to it. I could probably get some more strawberry kick to it by adding strawberries into here during the secondary fermentation or just the racking process, having it sit here and wait for a couple months. But wow, I am impressed. So I wish I had two of them. I wish I could compare between the one that didn't have strawberries and the one that did, but unfortunately I can't do that because it's all over the kitchen floor. But anyways, guys, this is another episode of Beer Brew Review, and I would definitely do this again, and I encourage you guys to go out and experiment with this stuff. That's what I'm doing. I'm not a professional by any means at this. I've never done this before. I just saw that you could make mead. I was really interested in if it would work, how it would taste, and you know, that's it. So go out, do this stuff yourself, guys. It's a lot of fun, and let me know in the comments if you do and how yours turned out and what you used. If you used something different than strawberries, if you used cherries, raisins, etc. I heard that actually putting raisins in instead of yeast nutrient is a pretty common thing to do in mead. If you have raisins around, you can use that as opposed to yeast nutrient. That part of my problem in the first place is probably because there's not, the sugars from the honey don't actually give the yeast enough of the nutrients to survive. That's probably why they conked out and died so early on, or went dormant so early on, and adding the yeast nutrient really helped kickstart this thing to run again. But I'm happy. So thanks guys for another episode of Beer Brew Review, and I will see you next time.